I'm going to start this video with an apology. 2 videos ago, I said that going to the Alps was going to be a 3-parter. 1, planning and preparation. 2, execution. 3, printing, processing, that kind of thing. Now, unfortunately, my plan was to print a large 2.5 meter panoramic and do this whole video and then show it, and it was going to be amazing. And that still is the case. But the printers are busy, and doing a 2.5 meter panoramic and making sure that it's right takes time. And what I didn't want to do was release a printing and processing video like 5 or 6 weeks after the execution video when I was in the Alps taking photographs. Now, it doesn't take 5 or 6 weeks to do a panoramic print, it just takes like a week or so for the lab to, you know, schedule it in and get it all done. But I'm going to Iceland next week for a week, so that like adds 2 weeks on top of the 2 weeks I have to wait to get it printed. So basically it would go from like me photographing in the Alps and then there'd be this 5-week gap. The one thing I get the most abuse for on this channel is for not releasing enough content. So 3 parts is now going to be 4 parts, and don't worry, it's not to get advertising or more views or more videos or anything like that. It's purely logistics. You'll notice that there's no adverts on this video and there'll be no adverts on the printing video. I don't want you to think of doing it to get more ad revenue. Not that I get much ad revenue anyway, but that is a whole different video. Right, quick trip report. I went to the Alps for 2.5 days. It's 3 days really, but 1 day was a travel day, so that doesn't count. So 2.5 days. 1 day was glorious weather, and that is when I did all of my shooting. Everything was crammed into 1 day, less than 1 day, because at the end of that day the bad weather started to move in. It started to rain and nothing could be done. Now, in my preparation and planning video, you will see that I wanted to shoot the Mont Blanc from the opposite side of the valley, from quite high up at Lac Blanc and all that area. And unfortunately, that was a sunset location, but I didn't get one sunset. So all my shooting was at sunrise. So when I had to make a decision of what best to shoot in the small window of weather that I had, I chose to go to the Glacier because that was a better sunrise location than hiking up to Lac Blanc, which would have been difficult anyway because there's lots of snow up there still. So I'd like to look at this trip as a bit of a recce, and I really want to go back in the summer months, so maybe I'll go back in July. I'm not sure. If I can, I will. Another thing I'd like to discuss is money. People, a lot of people have asked me, how do I make money off this trip to the Alps? Or how do I afford just to get up and go? Well, the truth is I don't. I'm not going to make any money off this. I may, you know, if I do, it will be from selling some prints. That'll be it. Now, that print that I sold previously, the Red Hut print, that is what funded this trip. If I choose to sell 1 or 2 prints from this Alps trip, then that will fund another trip. So that tends to be how it works. Certainly YouTube advertising, no, that won't even pay for the diesel to get around. But yeah, I think the money thing, that's you know, it's a subject for a whole other video, which perhaps I'll do one day. A lot of people have commented and said, did I seriously go all the way to the Alps and only shoot 4 images? Well, no, of course not. Only 4 images made the video. I actually came away with 8 images, which is quite good for me considering I did most of my shooting in 1 day, with the exception of that 1 image I took from my hotel room. I'm not a big shooter. I don't shoot everything. Something has to be quite special. I have to be sure that it's in with a chance of being a good image before I'll set up and take it. Here are the 8 images that I actually came away with. Now let's get into processing. So I'm gonna show you how I've processed 2 images, both of which I'm going to print. One of them is a large panoramic, the other one is not. It's just a standard image. Okay, so I'm going to start with the Glacier image. I'd also like to point out that this is not a tutorial. I'm just going to show you what I've done. Every image is different. I do like to keep them as natural as possible, but with a little bit of oomph. So hopefully you'll pick up a few tips. I don't know. I use Lightroom, by the way, and that is what I'm using to process this image. First things first, here is the final image, and This is the original RAW file. 5D SR, a lot of people are asking me, is it good? Would I buy one? Would I have one over the 5D Mark III? Ooh, I'd have them both. I haven't used the 5D SR enough to really review it in any kind of way, shape or form, so my opinion at the minute is not worth anything. But what I would say is look at the resolution. That is stonking. I mean, look at that. So I'm really excited to print this, really excited. Anyway, let's get onto processing this image. How do I work? Okay, so I look at an image and I think, what do I like about it? What don't I like about it? Usually I do crop in a bit. On this image, I'm not cropping. I think, you know, I've done myself proud and I've framed it perfectly. So no need to crop. It looks a little bit flat, not much contrast, and that's because it's a RAW file, of course. So I need to give it some power. Now it does look a little bit cool, a bit blue, so I just want to warm it up a touch. Not much. I don't want to go crazy because I really do like the blue tones, but I don't want to go overboard. So probably around about 6K. Yeah, that looks about right. So just warming it up a touch. I mentioned before that it needs just a touch of contrast, so I'll usually just bring it up a touch. This area here is quite bright, and if you look at the histogram you can see that it's sort of leaning towards being burnt out, so I definitely want to pull back the highlights, which will reveal a bit more detail in the cloud. So just pull back the highlight slider until I'm happy with this corner here. And there we go. You can see there's just much more detail in the cloud as opposed to before. Shadows, very quickly, you can see there are some really dark areas here and down here in the bottom right corner. So I'm just going to lift the shadows a touch. There we go. So we've done white balance, highlight, shadows, and put in a touch of contrast. I'm just gonna introduce a touch of clarity, probably somewhere around about +12. Don't want to go overboard with that. Certainly not. Still, it's looking good now. It's looking much better. I think I'm gonna give it a touch of saturation again. I use the saturation slider with caution, same as the clarity. It is easy to get carried away and push it all the way over. In this case, you know, about +14, something like that. We don't want to go overboard. Now we've still got some dark areas here, although I did increase the shadows. I still feel these areas are far too dark. When you look at the histogram, you can see we're losing a lot there in the shadows. So I'm going to use my brush and I'm very quickly going to pick shadows. I'm going to increase the shadows and just see what happens. It's just this area here. There we go, nothing crazy. It just brings out a bit of detail and a bit of the colour there. Alright, but too much. There we go. Okay, another thing that I'd like to do is to introduce more contrast to the mountains in the background, because there was a bit of haze and I did get rid of a lot of that with the polarizer. But I'd still like to introduce a bit more contrast just at the back here. You can see the difference that's making. There we go. For me, the image is all about this S-shaped glacier just here. I think it looks really nice, and what I want to do is just lift that, just make it a tiny bit more prominent within the image. So what I'm going to do is increase the highlights just a touch, pull back the shadows, this effectively is just giving it contrast, and then increase the saturation, and we'll see how this looks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sweep my brush along the glacier. And it's just gonna, got a nice soft edge on the brush. There we go. And all that's done is it's made the S-shaped curve of the Glacier just pop a little bit more. Finally, what I like to do with my images is a touch of sharpening. Now, you've got to be careful when sharpening your images and treat it with caution, because by sharpening the image you actually introduce a bit of noise, which isn't good. So you only want to sharpen the areas of the image that needs sharpening, and which in this case is everything but the sky. So just going to increase a bit of sharpening. Don't want to go mad with it. I'd say about plus 40, something like that. Now that's sharpened the whole image, so we've actually degraded the sky a bit, which isn't necessary. So I'm going to mask the image, and if I hold down Alt on the Mac and slide, I can mask the image. All the black areas we see, they are the areas that do not have sharpening. Alright, there we go. And the white areas do have sharpening. So that's it. This is the final image. This is the edited, and that's the raw file. I haven't done crazy amounts to it, but I have tried to bring out the best of the file. And it's fairly quick and simple, and I'm happy. When I print it, it will probably be reprocessed again, but that, again, my apologies, is a different video. Okay, so now we move on to the beast, the panoramic, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 images stitched onto this monster panoramic, each image 50 odd million megapixels. So this is the final image, black and white, lots of contrast, lots of mood, lots of drama, lots of interest. I really am enjoying this image, and I will quickly show you how I've processed this image. Right, here are my 8 panoramics. I just simply merge into a panorama, and the stitch is done. That didn't take too long, probably about 2.5 minutes. Let's have a look at it. So that to me looks like a pretty good stitch. We're going to let it process because it's a big file. This is a fast computer as well. Here we go. So I'm looking at this image. What am I looking at? What do I like? What don't I like? Well, the first thing obviously is this big horrible railing, and this guy, who's that? I don't know. And obviously you've got all the uneven edges. So first obvious thing we need to do, or that I'm going to do, is to crop it. I don't like this shadow here. I really don't. So I'm going to pull that in a touch as well and lose a bit of that shadow. There we go. So you can see I've cropped in quite a bit, but with the 50 odd megapixels and 8 images, there is so much room for cropping that I can totally get away with this. I'd also like to point out that this is seamless. Okay, there are no visible joins at all, so you would never know that this was stitched together. Nothing gives that away. Alright, great. So we've got the crop. I'm relatively happy with this. Again, this is probably going to change when I come to print it. So I need to convert to black and white. There we go. Now this image looks a little bit flat, especially over here in the mountains. There are also a few distractions that I can notice. People, gear, that sort of thing. So let's have a look. Now these two skiers, I love these two skiers. They are going to stay. These two, I don't think they add anything. This post is a bit distracting. What's going on here? Look at these guys just having a tea break, ruining my image. And someone's left a pair of skis here, that's no good. Also, I've only just spotted this now. I missed this on the original image. But look at these guys. Look at him. He's taking a picture the wrong way. He's looking back up. So I think I'm going to get rid of those as well. So I'm going to just lift the blacks a touch, mainly for this area over here. but I just want to make sure that I've got enough information in the darkest of shadows, so I'm just going to lift the blacks. I'm also going to increase the exposure ever so slightly. You can see my histogram, I have got room to do that. So just less than half a stop. Don't want to go crazy. And again, this is all about revealing more information in these dark shadows towards the left of the image. I'm going to leave the highlights alone for now. I'll come and I'll adjust those locally with the brush. Clarity. Now again, caution with the clarity tool. Right, the next thing I want to do is this sky. This sky is looking a little bit flat. A cool thing you can do here is come down to the color channel, and you can really reduce the luminosity of those blues. So by pulling the slider back, you can see how I have reduced the blues in the sky, and there's also a bit of a blue cast on the mountains. That's again going to help to add more contrast. I'd say about that. I don't want to go overboard, but yeah, by pulling back the blues in the black and white channel, that has darkened that sky and given me more contrast. So looking at the image now, we're still a bit dark on this left side. The highlights on this foreground bit are a bit too strong. There's a few distractions that I need to get rid of, and we're lacking a bit of contrast on this side of the mountains. So let's fix that very quickly. Use my local brush, touch of contrast, some nice soft edges. We're just gonna paint in a little bit of contrast, and you can see the difference that makes straight away. Perfect. I'm going to do a new brush now, and I'm going to go for shadows, and I'm going to lift the shadows on this side, these really dark mountains, and that is just giving the image a bit more balance from left to right. I am going to reduce the highlights on this foreground section. Alright, now I just need to get rid of some of these distractions, and all I'm going to do is use the clone tool, and this does a pretty good job. If there's anything that requires more work, I'll take it into Photoshop. What else do we have? These guys, look at them all chilling out. Somebody's left their skis here. These inconsiderate alpinists, honestly. Just get rid of them. See, the clone tool in Lightroom is really good. Sometimes more detailed work is required in Photoshop. Very quickly, I want to get rid of these people here. I'm gonna have to do that in Photoshop because it requires a little bit more finesse. And then that's it, the image is done. So very quickly, because I'm aware this video might be dragging on, edit in Adobe Photoshop. So this is Photoshop open. Now my only task is to get rid of these people here. And it isn't going to require too much effort, I don't think. It's just a case of using the clone stamp tool to get rid of them. Got to be careful that you don't get repetition of cloning. Like, you don't want to build a pattern because that can look really unnatural. And just like that, they're gone. So the main area of interest now are these two skiers down here, and when you look at the large print and you start looking at detail, you might spot a couple of people over here as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and got something out of it. Now if you've got any comments, or you want to scrutinize my techniques, that's fine. I'm not the world's best Photoshop and Lightroom technician. Just leave comments below. The printing video I hope will come in a few weeks. I'm going to Iceland next week for a week for a completely different project, which I will be vlogging, so that should be interesting. And then I expect the printing video to come after that. I apologise for the delay, it's just hectic at the moment. So I'm going to go, and I hope you've learned something. Thank you for watching.